Today, in this video, we are going to make sketching simple. In fact, we are going to be reveling in the simplicity, seeing how simple we can make sketching. And as a result, how good we can make sketching, how comforting and how lovely our art can be if we just simplify things. The idea here is to really make you feel confident. And later, if you want, you could use these simple sketches as building blocks to advance your style, to create really detailed sketches. But also, for me, they're always going to be my style. They're going to be how I love creating art. And I really think by the end of today's video, not only will you have created a couple of lovely things, not only will you have a bit of extra confidence, a few of you will agree with me that actually sketching like this is something we could do forever and always enjoy and always learn from. If you enjoy learning creative skills, then you might want to check out today's sponsor. Our sponsor is SKILLSHARE. SKILLSHARE are an online learning community where it feels like you can pretty much learn anything. They have, of course, got classes on sketching and painting, classes on other creative things like cooking, but also classes designed for people who are creative professionals, entrepreneurs. If you want to learn about how to use your social media more effectively or set up a website, for example. You can also find collated learning paths. These are collections of some of the best classes out there, which means that you can sort of set yourself a goal, like here, take your knitting to the next level, or build your foundation in figure drawing, and know that you're going to get taken through every step. For me, I chose a Procreate class recently, or a Procreate learning path, which took me from zero to hero to actually being able to create rather an effective portrait, just understanding the nitty gritty of Procreate like I couldn't do just on my own. So if you want an actionable way to learn simple sketching techniques along with how to cook your dinner and set up your website, then join Skillshare today by using the awesome offer below. First 500 people to click it will get a free month on Skillshare as a trial. Now, with all that said and done, let's start sketching. All you're going to need to join in today are a couple of reference photos, which are linked in the description below down there. Then a piece of paper. I'm using my C. White Brighton A5 half letter sized sketchbook. This has got watercolor paper in. That's great because it's going to let us use our watercolors. You could use a set of watercolors just with a few colors, with loads of colors. I'm just going to be using a few of my colours here, and I'll tell you what they are as I use them. You can also find all of these linked in my supplies link in the description. I've got two brushes, a size 10 round brush with a nice point on it, and a 1/4 inch flat brush, just for something a little bit different if you want to add some extra details. Then, of course, we've got some tissues and water and a pen, and I've got my fountain pen, but there are loads of kinds of pens you could use, from a ballpoint pen to a rollerball to a Fude, even to a Posca pen or a fine liner. So don't feel trapped in the things I like using. Do use what you have available, and it does not need to be fancy, because today is, of course, all about being simple, which is probably the opposite of being fancy. Because what we want to be able to do is to really comfortably sketch anything, and to be able to comfortably sketch anything, it means we have to get comfortable with simplifying. So let's just look at our normal sketching processes, break them down, and create a couple of really simple, lovely sketches. So we've got this scene, this first scene, and all we need to do is find the really big shapes. And the big shapes are these kind of rectangles making up the houses, making up they're not even houses, are they? They're giant buildings. We've got a little sort of probably Christmas tree, isn't it? Coming down the side here, that's just a triangle. And then we got the bottom of the rectangles. Now they're in a little bit of perspective. That's important to realise, because you need to get that line sloping down towards you and sloping up away from us. Then we can find the sort of midpoints of our buildings. Got one there, we've already decided one's there. And then we can start finding some of these other horizontal lines. And all we're trying to do is get the simplest shape. So if we're doodle sketching, making life simple, what we need to be asking ourselves isn't what is the exact way that this building looks. What we need to ask ourselves is, what's the simplest shape which explains what's going on? So I've got some squares. We can do the same in this next building. We can just do some really simple awnings, just very simple shapes. instead of counting, let's just not count, let's fit them in. And then we can fit our other shapes around that. So you can see I'm one short because of the scale that I put them in, but that's not going to be a problem. We've got, I'm going to just skip out the door to make up for that. And we can do another one, another door here, which is in the building. And we just match those windows by going above them. And I'm getting the simplest idea of these shapes. So although the scene's not going to end up perfect, it's not going to end up exactly the same. It's going to be comfortable, it's going to be fun to sketch. And you know what? If I wanted to do a perfect, lovely, finished piece, I can. I can take the learning from this one and I can put it into another one and take a bit more time over it. But often we're just somewhere for a few minutes, aren't we? We just want to be able to sketch our scene really quickly and feel good about it. In the distance here again, we can just do really simple window shapes. Don't need to do any details at all. We can get a vague idea of the scale, these windows being a little bit bigger than the windows above, and we can try and get the right sort of number of windows in. We've got 4 floors of windows, but they don't have to be super accurate. Look, mine are a bit higgledy-piggledy up and down. We can even pop our little person in here. Look, got a big umbrella. Actually, there's 2 people, aren't there? 2 people hiding under that very big umbrella. So let's get our little people in. Simple shapes. So basically what I've done, little triangle, circle for a head, little upside down triangle for legs. Then in the background, well, we've got another building coming in, again in perspective, so make sure that we get those lines angling a little bit. And then we can just get the idea of what's going on here. So we've got these kind of window shapes. We don't need to put as much emphasis on these windows as the ones in the front. They're kind of background, aren't they? They're not part of the main scene, so we can kind of just let things drizzle and fade out. The roof feels quite important though, doesn't it? So let's get these roof shapes in again, keeping it simple. These kind of little triangular roofs can potentially be trip hazards for our endeavours, but if we keep them nice and simple and just get the overlapping feel of these shapes, then we are bound to be all right in the end. And it kind of all fades out. The top of the scene just disappears off the edge of our paper, doesn't it? So if we just finish off with a couple of simple windows and we let things fizzle out, that will be the same as our reference, and that will be more than enough. It's often very tempting to try and invent things which aren't really there. There are a few bits we haven't added in yet though, so let's get this little light in the front. We can get little details like little lanterns hanging. Can't talk today apparently. These little poles coming out, they're nice details. They sort of add something extra. And then what we can do, we've got our scene, we've got it really simple. We can just make some of these lines a little bolder. This is part of our sort of doodle sketching process, is to first find the key lines and then refine the most key lines. The most key lines are what are going to make this very simple scene make sense. And it's amazing how simple it is, isn't it, when you then compare it to what's going on in the reference. But with a little bit of colour, it will all just come to life. And unlike our normal sketching, we can just do maybe just 1 layer of colour if we want, but we can also have a think about doing 2 layers of colour. It really isn't going to matter. There will be lots of options available. So here we go. Simple little extra bits for these awnings. Little bit of hatching for the darkness in there. And there we go. We're ready just to add some colour to our very simple doodle sketch. So it's quite convenient here that these buildings are rather yellow, aren't they? So we can just take an out of the pan yellow. So that yellow is here. That for me is this Hansa yellow medium. So all I'm going to do is gently colour in. Basically colour in these areas. I'll avoid some of the windows if I can, but it's not going to matter too much. The windows are dark. So we can actually come back in on top of this colour and make the windows dark. These windows have got some light in them, so I'm actually going to take a little bit more care to go around these windows. And as we get towards the bottom of this building, we can see it's actually probably a bit more of a murky colour than a bright yellow. So we'll get this simple yellow, Hansa yellow medium, simple yellow in most of the building. Then we can come back with a slightly deeper colour. This is a bit of a quinacridone, and we can just touch that in. And that will sort of move around, it will flow in with the other colours and hopefully create a nice effect. Using this same colour we can start just adding in simple shadows, And I've missed out a little bit down here, haven't I? So I'm going to use this same gold to give a sort of deeper appearance to the bottom. Around our scene, let's just find a little neutral colour. So I've got a neutral mix here, which is a combination of blue and brown. Mine's has the indigo and a Van Dyke brown. And then that can just come. And you see if we touch it in there, it's going to let some of that lovely yellowy orangey colour seep down and join in the front. In the background we've got a more murky colour, so I'm going to take some quinacridone sienna and I'm going to just wash that down like so. And then last but not least we've got our lovely tree. A little bit of cobalt green can just make this tree pop forward. That's a much brighter green than it is in reality, but again it simply doesn't matter too much. I'm going to leave the roofs and just apply a little splash of blue, and that little splash of blue can sort of spread out. And there you go, that could be our simple doodle sketch finished. But what we're going to do, we're going to let that dry and we'll add one more layer of colour and you'll just see how it will hopefully pop off the page, come to life even more. So we are back. I've got my 1/4 inch flat brush now and we're going to use basically the same colours and we're just going to identify a few of our darker areas and a few places where we're just trying to sort of accentuate shape. So here I'm just pulling apart all the shadows and emphasising perhaps some shadow underneath some of our awnings, underneath some of our sort of ridges in the roof and underneath some of our windows. Then our awnings can get those little touches of colour they're begging out for. So little bits of green for here. Again, I'm using the same simple cobalt green, which I can then layer into this tree just to bring it forward. Then over on the other side, we've got something rather dark and brown, haven't we? So I'll just take my simple brown, touch that in each of these awnings. And we can also use pretty much that same colour with a tiny bit of blue, just to neutralise it in our windows. And that, hopefully, will start just creating nice, very simple feel of these windows. And just move around like so. And like so, just working gently into each one. Now if we want to neaten it up, what we can do, we can just come back in with a dry brush and move that colour a touch. Just little bits of movement. Nothing crazy, nothing difficult at all really, just moving it around with a clean brush. A little bit of blue, might have a bit of fun if we just touch some blue into there. Little bits of blue might just suggest some reflection. And then we said some of these windows over here are a bit lighter, so I'm going to do a bit more blue and just touch, 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 touch. Sorry, we said they were darker, that's what I meant to say. So I'm touching in with a bit more blue to make it more concentrated pigment. Touching in each one of these. Do you see how that's got a darker feel to these windows already? Little touches, little squares. And perhaps we could just do the same, deepen that shadow even more, just in a few places. Bit more of our dark colour to come down here. And we could even just do a couple of touches in these windows as well. And we're almost there, really, we're almost there with this simple doodle sketch. And what you don't want to do when you're doing these really quick doodles and you're just making life easy, you definitely don't want to overwork things. So let's just find some funny little touches we can see in there. We've got little bits of red, we've got these kind of red signs, so we can add those suggestions. We can even suggest a few more in here and here. These are punches of colour just lifting forward. That red perhaps we can add into the ceiling, the roof here and here, just as little splashes, not overdoing it, but just filling in a bit of the negative space which we can see. And then we could even take just some concentrated quinacridone and we can kind of suggest what's going on here. There's a little sign going on here, isn't there? So we can suggest that. And we can even see little bits of green, can't we? We've got lots of little trees and things going on. So if we just touch in some of these greens into some of the windows, same up here. And there we go. So now, last thing I'm going to do, let this dry and we'll see if a tiny bit more pen will just finish it off. And there we go. So let's just grab our pen out. And now what we can do, we can collect some of these watercolour marks. And all we're doing, keeping the simple shapes, we're just refining them with making them feel where the watercolours are a bit splashy, making them feel very purposeful because the ink can come around and collect them. We've already restated some lines, haven't we, at the beginning? That was to get our very simple scene off the ground. Here we're kind of getting our details off the ground a little bit, working in reverse with the colours sort of doing their thing and then just suggesting little bits with our pen on top. Come down here, get these little reds, just simple lines, just pretending there's something there. You can do tiny bits of hatching as well if we want to deepen the colour of some areas, deeper the value, the shadow. Same here, we can just even do some simple hatching all the way down the front here because it's a bit darker all the way down the front, isn't there? And these are just the simplifications that we're making to make our scene make sense whilst also just making it achievable in a very short space of time. You can suggest writing up in that little bit of gold we added, little blocks of squares there, and we can come along our roof line here, just enhance it a little bit. Just, we've kept it very loose and suggestive, but coming on top will just, for me, enhance it hopefully and make it feel loose, suggestive and a bit purposeful, because that's what we want from our loose art. We want it to feel like we made it loose on purpose, otherwise it looks like potentially mistakes or accidents, but that bit of confidence is what really makes it work. Pop a signature down here, and somewhere in the line work I hide my actual signature, and then we can just look for those last little touches. And it's tempting to keep going and going and going, isn't it? But we're sketching, we're leaving things to the imagination, so just do leave bits to the imagination. Do not feel you need to keep going and adding more and more and more. I'm going to unify the hatching down the front here. That's something which does feel important. So if I just do little bits of hatching, I think that will say a lot about the scene. And the same here, if I actually just do some very simple hatching on the sort of unimportant house, I think that will say rather a lot. And again, just aims to lift this important building forward and let it do the heavy lifting, the heavy sort of visual lifting in our scene. And there we go. Let's just recollect our people down here, a little bit of emboldening, get that umbrella working for us. And that's my first little doodle sketch for you today. Having spent a little bit of time on that rather simple sketch, what that means is we can actually do a really quick and fun sketch even quicker and even more simply. This time I'm going to be using a bolder pen. This is a Fude pen, still with a permanent ink in it, of course. And we're following the same principles, but this time I'm just going to go for it. And I'm going to do it like I would if I was, out and about and I just wanted to capture a scene. So that is just really quickly scratching on my paper and finding those simple shapes. And proportions might go wrong, that's okay. This is a kind of the ultimate in terms of sketching, the ultimate in terms of first draft or trial run. This might be a finished work, but it might also be something you do as almost like an advanced thumbnail to work out, what it is you like about the scene and how you're going to capture it more completely. Someone once commented on my videos about how they're implausible because of how inaccurate they are. And you know what? That's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm not here to set the world alight with wonderful accuracy. I just want to have a bit of fun. So if I'm coming here and making things wrong, I'm getting the wrong number of windows, but I'm having fun and I'm creating something which, although it's so inaccurate, it's implausible, it still looks cool. I'm very happy with that. If it doesn't look cool but I had fun, I'm still going to be happy. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm just finding the shapes and having a bit of a play around and just doing it really quickly. And if we do it quickly, things will go wrong. And this is what I think people often don't appreciate. And when I say people, I mean people who like to comment on our work, who aren't artists, but I also mean ourselves as artists. Other artists tend to be the kindest people. Rather than ourselves, rather than non-artists, other artists tend to see the kind of beauty and the difficulty and the skill that it took to do things. And that, I think, is the same for all of us, that we will see other people's work and how brilliant it is and how much life they've got into it, whilst looking at our own and going, oh, I wish it could be better. But here, this is the ultimate in getting away from that, just being able to really quickly find our key shapes, key textures, key little bits here and there, key shadows, for example. And this is where a few day pen comes in absolutely great. We can just find those shadows in a second, in a little jiffy. They can just leap off the page. They can be alive right in front of our eyes like that. Key bits just come to life, come onto our page. Before you know it, that's basically the ink work done, isn't it? And then keeping in mind the same principles we had before, which is simple colours applied simply. This time I'm going to just let things play with water absolutely loads. So there's some cobalt blue, there's some water. Easy. This shadow in the back has a blue tinge to it, so I'll use my indigo mix and some water. So simple. Up here, a little bit of red onto that roof, and that's implying a roof. Great. We got a darker sort of blue shadow here. I'm putting a bit more brown into it. Very easy. We can then drop some blue in to bring it to life a little bit. I like the kind of reddy feel to this sidewalk, which also reflects this red up here. And then we'll just bring some more blue into the actual pavement to separate things out. We've got a couple of other nice bits of red we could punch in. Red, red, red. And then a little bit of green. Oh, that's the least green I've ever seen in my life. Let's try that one again. I'm just going to put that green on top. And now what I've managed to do is mix my green and my red together, and I've got a lovely sort of golden colour. That's all right. So we'll separate that out. If I wanted, I could lift it off with a bit of tissue, but instead I'm going to drop some green on top of that. And actually it works quite well, just giving that autumnal background. And there you go. Things go wrong. Things go wrong in the stupidest ways. That was really silly of me to fail to pick up green, to then mix my green and my red in my pan. But you know what? It's all right. These things happen. And that's why we do these doodle sketches, to take the pressure off. And that actually has been so quick. And for me, this is a lively, fun little sketch that I probably like even more than the first one. And I'll let you be the judges of that. If you do enjoy this, do join me on Skillshare. You can also join me on sketchloose.co.uk, where you find some in-depth sort of classes about this style of sketching. But most importantly, have fun, enjoy yourself, and sketch loose. So thank you everyone for watching my little sketching videos. If you enjoy my content, please do subscribe to my channel, because it makes me really, really happy. Thanks again.